Hello there, and welcome to Inspire Me Forward. My name is Linda Watson. I am your host and the founder of this beautiful and inspiring episode. We are on our season three and our second year, into our second year. And what we do is we sit in virtual circle and we offer a space for our guests to share their stories. Those stories are of life, of love, of everything that happens in between that. And we really realize that in sharing organically, we create a community. And in that community, we offer spaces for others to sit and realize that they're not alone and they're not alone on their journey. And that's our ethos, so to speak, for Inspire Me Forward. And we also believe that creating stories creates this collective connection, or sharing stories creates this collective connection. And maybe just what one person shares is exactly what another person needs to hear. So, welcome to our 25th episode. And with me today, I have Liz Lane. And the title of this episode is Soft Magic of Stories. So, Liz, I'd love for you just to have a few minutes and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. Well, thank you, Linda. So I'm Liz Lane, and I am currently based in North Wales in the United Kingdom on a beautiful farm on the side of a hill.
Heaven right there, but a little wet, as you said, right now.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
a little wet.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about stories. And I always do a little research beforehand on what we've really talked about or what we talked about in our pre-conversation. And we looked at I looked at stories. Like, what is a story? Like, how do we define a story? And of course, it went every which way. When I sort of went down the proverbial rabbit hole, it went every which way. But it can be imaginary. A story can be a imaginary accounting of something. It can be a real account of something. Um, a story is something a news a journalist does and tells a story, and it's their story. It can be a false explanation of something. It can be gossip. Yeah, it goes all over the place. And I'm fascinated that we're going to talk about this. When I sort of looked at all that and went, wow, like stories are everywhere. And they go along this continuum of like false and not false and true. And I think that really ties into what we've been talking about is this: where do they sit for us? And where do stories sit for each of us? Um, And I wanted to bring up this quote that I found or saw at an exhibition in London, England once when I was there with my daughter, and we went to an old, I guess that time they would call them insane asylums in olden days. But they had these pictures and they had these quotes. But this quote, just as always, and this would have been maybe 10 years ago. But this quote has really stuck with me. It says, each person is a story, and every story has the capacity to teach something about each one of us. There are as many stories as there are lives, and there are many stories within each life.
Mm.
And that one has sat in my heart for all that time. And I think that's why this is why I do this, is because it's these stories that we tell. And, that we have this capacity in these stories to do that. So let's just jump in. My first question to all of my guests is, please share a time, or if you would, share a time where you were the receiver of an act of kindness.
Mm. Well, as I said earlier, this question has had me pondering because I perceive that I've received many acts of kindness in my life, and I'm going to refer to one that actually I'm going to jump into another one now. My brain said I could choose a different one, and it's about a time when I went out to the horses. I have horses in my life, and I went out to visit the horses, and I was feeling confused and ungrounded and upset about a situation. And my oldest horse, who's been with me since she was 6, she's now 24.
Mm-hmm.
She spotted me from across the field and just came straight over and just stood by me, and just her presence whilst I was there with the emotions that were really alive in me. It felt like a kindness that she brought herself to be with me without judgment, without opinion, bringing that pure presence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say that's the sort of thing that just really touches my heart.
Mm-hmm.
No words needed,
No,
just
no, yeah, that presence.
that presence, just massively magical and benevolent and kind and
Mm-hmm.
beyond words.
Yeah,
So
really.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
how did that, I guess, how did it evolve in you when she came over and sat? How did that emotion evolve in you at that time? Did it lift? Did it?
I think there was like a giving of permission for an expansion of the emotion. So like the sadness kind of grew, and it was okay for that expansion of that to become big, because I think sometimes when emotions get recognized and acknowledged, they can get really big and almost scary. And so I I feel I remember that that energy of upset grew in my body, and then I do remember letting some tears out, and then I felt a release. So there was quite a movement in me.
Mm,
um just I think in that being recognized, being acknowledged, and allowing myself to acknowledge and not hide away from what I was feeling
yeah,
was
yeah,
really, really powerful. So
that's
yeah.
beautiful. You're sharing that. It's so poignant that we don't necessarily have to look to each other for kindness. There's kindness everywhere, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting you say just that the act of coming over and being with you. I remember listening to something of Simon Sinek's the other day, and it was all what was it? All we need is 8 minutes to be with somebody and just sit with somebody
Mm.
and be present with somebody for that emotion to change. I'm paraphrasing here, but it was this beautiful that you just need 8 minutes with somebody to just sit with them. And that just reminded me of that. Maybe we humans are catching on that it's it's sometimes just sitting and being present.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
with somebody exactly as they are, that I guess the horses teach me, and Yoda particularly taught me in that moment about bringing herself over to accompany me in the emotion that I was experiencing, so then I can carry that forwards to with humans, being with them where they're at. A
Absolutely.
friend,
Yeah.
someone I've never met,
So yeah, it's
that's
like a dual gift. It was a gift for you to release the emotion, but it's a gift for you to go, oh, I can do that. I can pass this along.
mm,
Do the
mm.
same thing. So wow, that's so beautiful. And the fact that it's there, it was a choice. What a gift! And that it was her choice. I've seen a video of your place, and they have ample space to actually
and
come over and be with you. Is
and
like,
she loves her food. She
uh,
loves her food. So, there's a lot of grass out there, and to actually give up the food and come and stand with me, I had nothing to give her, like, in fact, I was in kind of, I could say I was in need in
uh,
some way.
yeah.
I wasn't asking her to come to me, and
Mhm.
she chose to leave what she was doing and come over. So
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. Well, we will pick up on the magic and the horses in a bit, uh, and come back to that. But I'd love to give you a bit of time for you to share with our viewers and our listeners, just you. Share your story as much as wherever you'd like to go on that, but wherever you're located and what you've done and wherever you'd like to go with that.
Yeah, thank you. It's an interesting invitation. What's my story?
Mhm.
Where do I begin? At the beginning. Okay, I was born in Bristol, in the southwest of England, and had a fairly regular childhood, I'm going to say. I
Mhm.
got introduced to horses quite early on, which was quite a magical thing because my parents didn't have any association with horses. So from the age of 5, they became a big part of my world. And
Mhm.
through my teenage years, I was very oriented towards horses, not boys, which I think was probably uh, what's the word? Something my mother was probably happy about, and uh, and continued that kind of infatuation with horses through my teenage years and went to university in Wales. Interestingly,
Mhm.
Wales was calling me, Wales the country, not Wales the animals, was calling to me at that point. And that's where I still live today, in Wales. And at university, I studied at kind of agriculture, animal studies and agriculture. And then life led me into traveling for a number of years through Ireland and America and Canada and New Zealand and Australia, all the time working with horses, exploring my way around the world, meeting people. I think I always had that a hunger for adventure.
Mhm.
When more recently I've contemplated what it is that really is my excitement, my draw in life. What is it that gets me up in the morning? It's possibility and the possibility of adventure. And that's I kind of in everything that I do, whether it's meeting new people, whether it's going to a new place, whether it's starting a new job, um, it's my quest is for adventure,
Mhm.
which even opening a book, I'm looking for an adventure.
Mhm.
Starting a conversation, I'm looking for an adventure, and I'm not wanting to skim the surface. I'm wanting to dive in deep into that adventure. Um, so yeah, that's something I've become more aware of during my life because I traveled on my own most of the time, and I like that because I got to choose my own adventure. I always used to like those books. I don't know if you had them
Yep.
in America. Choose your own adventure where you pick the page and then you go forwards. And I feel like life or my steps in life are a little bit like a choose your own adventure thing of like, okay, I'll try this. I don't really like that. Now I'm going to choose that. Um, so yeah, traveled a lot, met lots of different people doing different types of horse training. Always felt like there was something else that I wasn't quite getting. I wasn't quite receiving the connection that I was looking for.
Mhm.
Um, Life continued to happen around me. I was present with it, but when I look back, I'm not sure how present I really was because it seems now I move through the world in a whole different way
Mhm.
of awareness. I think something happened around the age of 40 where I ended a long term relationship. And that actually evolved because it evolved me. And it came about because I went on a workshop with a Finnish lady called Nora,
Mhm.
who sat a group of us in circle at this workshop. And I think the question was, who are you? And
Mhm.
out of, I think there was about 16, 17 people sat in that circle, one man, everyone else female. Uh, and nearly everybody cried. And we were a mixture of ages. And it just brought everyone to tears, that question. And I really was felt a strong emotion. And it was almost like I got woken up out of a sleep of like, oh yeah, who am I? What is it I'm doing with this one precious life, as a
Mm,
famous person once said? I was like, I I'm not sure I'm doing the adventure that I once was back in my 20s. I think I've lost connection with who I am. And
mm,
so I stepped out of that relationship, went back to Canada for 6 months, went to a very dreamy horse ranch where that kind of sowed the seeds of a new vision for me of living in a place where I could be with horses that had more of their autonomous, natural life,
mhm,
basically, of roaming over large acreages and choosing their forage, and having their own adventure, as I
mm,
perceive horses to naturally be in a herd. They're living the adventure of life, of social contact and moving, exploring the environment, living in harmony,
mhm,
um, and having all their familial support system. So yeah, the 6 months in Canada really inspired me into looking at different ways of being with horses and
mm,
how could I continue forward in my life with integrating my own personal development and self-awareness and being with the horses in that way,
mhm.
and finding what was my vocation, what was I here for, how do I show up, and what do I bring when I do show up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then that's where did that led me back coming back to Wales, following some more windy paths, and then meeting a lady whose family owns a farm where there was the invitation of bringing my horses and realizing the dream of them living on a large acreage.
Right.
So that's where I moved to 2.5 years ago, and that's where I sit today. The horses are pretty much living that life.
Mhm,
And I reflect now back into myself of what now?
mhm,
Where does the story expand from here?
yeah.
I know certain aspects like vision. We get invited quite often in life, by the question, what is our vision? What
Yeah.
and in contemplating what is my vision had the line of I want the horses to be living their most natural life on the land,
Mhm,
and I want to live close to them. And that
yeah.
left a lot of space for the universe to throw in different invitations for me to explore. Well, how much does it matter how comfortable that I am? And
Mm,
aspects of self-care around that. So I now actually have a bigger vision, the next step I perceive, which is about growing, evolving into communal living
mhm,
that incorporates so many aspects of life. The horses are absolutely a part of that
mhm,
life,
yeah.
and the communion with the land, the communion with other people, the co-creation of home
Oh,
is,
what a
yeah,
sentence. Oh my
is the
goodness.
next chapter waiting to
Oh
be
my
written.
goodness. Sign me up, girl. The co-creation of home. That's a magical line for me. That just brings tears to my eyes and warms my heart. What can you define adventure? To you, what does that word adventure mean?
Yeah, it's when I say it, my reflection is that it's actually a physical sensation
Okay.
as much as anything else. So
Mm,
it's a sensation of a kind of tingliness, an aliveness, an
Mm-hmm.
expansion. So there can be a bit of a seesaw almost of energetics inside me of excitement and sort of trepidation
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, like a little bit edgy.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
I read somewhere something about oh, I can't remember how it goes exactly, but it was something about living life on the edge. It's more exciting. There's more space on the edge, like with the image of somebody standing in the middle of a crowd. Some people that brings them comfort with that
Mm-hmm.
feeling support all around them. However, for me, I kind of like to be on the edge of a group of people because then I can lean in, I can
Yeah,
feel that accompaniment,
yeah.
and there's so much space for beyond my imaginationness to happen. And
Yeah.
possibility is absolutely one of my highest values. So
It's all out there. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's something about I've written on this is there's leaving your comfort zone. And the many people that I call them like comfort zone cliff divers because they just want to dive off. But then there's somebody said it to me once and it's stuck is this growing our edges.
Mm,
Because there's so many people in the world that don't know what a comfort zone is even. So there's something to be said for that familiarity and that comfort and that safety there. But that's teetering, like you said, that give and take or that bit of a pull between the each and being able to see all that's out there or see into the unknown. And that
mm,
growing edges is always like expansion. It's like that, okay, well, I can be both places and
yeah.
feel that pull.
The awareness of the immenseness of everything is
Yeah. Yeah.
to to have an awareness of other
Mm-hmm.
beyond a familiar contained life
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
for me is it's something about knowing there are many books in the library and then books that haven't been written and books that are just thoughts and there's so much possibility.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Thank you. There's so much there that there's just you. I, I feel you live a rich life and rich in, I know I mean rich in heart and rich in contemplating these and taking these adventurous steps that come to you and that's uh that's inspiring and that inspired me. Um so we were talking wanted to talk a bit about stories. You and I had sort of chatted before about stories and like there's stories that we tell ourselves from the past, from social media, from everywhere around us, that whole world around us. There's stories we tell ourselves. There's stories that we hear. There's stories that we actually live. Um, and then it's just it's this narrative that's sort of based on our beliefs, our values, our experiences. There's this narrative that goes on within us that it really can shape how we view the world and how
Mm,
we see and how we walk in the world, how we interpret other events that are going on. And there's stories that are told to us. There are stories that are handed down to us. Familial stories or community stories that are cultural stories that are handed to us. Um, but then how do each of these serve us? We sort of got talking, well, how do these serve us? And I'd like to just rip sort of on that a little bit and just see where we go with that. But there is this idea that stories are they're what changed. They're the only thing I heard the other day. I think it was on a movie or something. But it was like stories are the only thing that can change the world.
wow.
And yeah, that was like that's really powerful because it really is. whether it's a short story, a long story, or it's a snippet on Instagram of 30 seconds, or something here that's an hour long. It's these stories that will change, that are, can and do change the world. So I guess where do we start is maybe like, what about the stories we tell ourselves that sort of come from a place of not really who we are? And I'd love for your just, yeah, like I say, I'd love to just sort of riff on this and see where we end up. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I suppose I'm thinking of that moment of sitting in that circle and being asked, who am I?
Yeah.
And having a moment of almost searching in my database of the story that I would most like to share. So when we sit in circle, there's, and I've sat in many circles, I feel like it's an opportunity to really touch into the heart of truth about myself. If the circle's held in a really safe way and it feels yeah, safe and comfortable to speak. And I think in that moment there was almost like a shock, because it was like, okay, there's a familiar book of I'm Liz, I do this, I come from here, this is
Mhm.
who I am. That actually I didn't want to reach for that book. There was like a reluctance to reach for that story,
Yeah.
because I had a sense that actually I wasn't that story. I was actually the potential of a blank book
Mm.
with almost like ghost writing. Maybe the ghost writing is the kind of like bits that I would like to have in the book, that are the acknowledged wisdoms of predecessors, of experiences gone by, that I
Mm.
would like them to hold the edges as such of the blank pages, and at the same time
Mm.
um, create an energy of everything is possible going forwards. That I guess those wisdoms of the old stories, to really acknowledge the value of them,
Mm.
the contribution, because all of those stories, I guess, wove together and knitted together to create the form of the invitation forwards.
Mm.
Um, and I also like the idea of the blank pages.
Mm.
You know, that every day there's that ability to give ourselves permission
Mm.
to script our lives in the way that we wish.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
on some levels, I guess, knowing that there's a structure that we've learned on how life can look, that we
Yeah.
can lean into for some guidance, support. So I guess it's about finding that balance, isn't it? When we're feeling
Mm.
nourished and balanced and whole in ourselves, maybe
Yeah.
those are the times when the blank page can seem exciting. And then on other days when we're feeling a bit wobbly and actually not feeling resourced at all, then we probably do want to look at yesterday's or
Mm.
a while ago and resource into that. So
Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
when we're holding the pen and we're writing the next words of our story as it unfolds, then I guess it is about finding that balance, isn't it, of
Yeah.
how we're feeling in that moment.
And yeah, and it's such a thing of presence. It's such a an act in the present moment of, as you said, how I'm feeling here. Do I need to look at the written page, or do I need to um, sort of go into that blank page and look at the possibilities? But
Mm.
it's almost like holding the pen is the present moment. The act of holding the pen, and not just before it touches the page, is the present moment. Where what am I going to write, or what am I going to see, or what do I need right now?
Mm.
Interesting. So then another thing we talked about is softening, and we call this the soft magic of stories because when we talked earlier, it was, I think, the softness, the magic, and the stories are what all came up for us in our sort of pre-conversation. Um, and you asked me this question. I'm trying to remember how I answered, and it will come to me. But I remember you asking me is what's your story of softening? So I'd love to send that question back to you. Is what is your story of softening? What a question that was. Even though I can't remember what I answered.
Yeah, I think mm, what comes to me now um, is about it's actually about femininity. I'm not sure if that's what came up before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the idea of I've been quite an independent character in my life and maybe feeling like I needed to get on with stuff and get on with it under my own energy and not maybe that was about not feeling I had anyone to rely on or um mm. And so I have the idea that I created a kind of quite I'm going to call it masculine kind of getting on with the energy.
Yeah,
I mean, I perceive that we have both masculine and feminine within us, and
yeah, yeah.
sometimes that can get a little out of balance, maybe. And so when I actually, after ending that long-term relationship and then came back around again after quite a number of years of being single and independent and back into the getting on with it and not relying on people really that much. I came back round to relationship and intimate relationship, and in that there seemed to be this real opportunity to explore how was it to be vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess that comes down to speaking the truth in the moment
Mm-hmm.
in a whole different way.
Mm-hmm.
Something about being in an intimate relationship, there's more of a moment to moment invitation to be with how one is feeling, whereas if you're on your own quite a lot, you
Yeah.
can just be with yourself and weave through the world. But
Mm-hmm.
when somebody's really with you, there's quite a reflective potential of how am I, how is this, do I want to do this, how's it going to affect that person, how is this, more
Yeah.
of a conversation. And so I think I discovered that I would hold things in me and not really speak them because I didn't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then my partner's presence was reassuring in a way that opened up the space for me to feel I could speak
Yeah.
in situations where previously I might not have spoken up.
Mm.
And and so it's almost like a sense of holding, a sense of being a physical holding
Yeah. Yeah.
and an energetic vibrational holding.
Yeah.
I was really able to lean into, and that created some kind of energetic softening in me,
Mm.
like a
Yeah.
permission. So I'm not sure if that really answers, but there was something in that
Yeah. Yeah. No good.
held, feeling
Yeah.
held. And I would say that happens with the horses as well. There's a sense of being held. And maybe there's a bigger holding, being
Mm.
allowing myself to feel held by life, that
Mm.
actually life, the universe, something bigger than me
Yeah.
is has got my back. The idea,
Yeah.
that if I was to I was going to say fall, maybe let go, not
Mm-hmm.
holding on to life tightly, that kind of control, that independence, that I need to do this. What happens to let go, to soften into the who's going to catch me?
Yeah.
And actually, it's a trusting in life somehow, trusting that
Yeah.
life's got my back. And my partner is a reflection of life.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
horses are an expanded reflection of life.
Mhm. Would you maybe even call that a surrendering?
Yeah. Yeah. Softness, surrendering. Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Mm,
Eh,
yeah.
it's interesting, and as you're speaking that, and I'm hearing you're speaking, and but of course at the same time I'm hearing these moments were my moments, and it's it's been about moves. The softening has been about moving from fight to flow. It's been this, and I don't mean fight in a physical sense. I mean it in a fighting life, fighting the flow of life. And it's been this surrendering to let you, like you say, it's like this, just this stepping off and this trusting and this like just just letting this, not having to have this control or power, or and that we're brought up that you have to be strong and you have to be this and this is weakness, and surrendering is weakness, and where I think as we get older and we have more life experiences, we realize that it's the opposite. And
Yeah.
there's these constant little reminders and opportunities for us to soften more. And another one. So often there isn't one big one, it's these opportunities to go, I have a choice here. I can fight this, or I can lie back in I call it the river of surrender, and just let the current take me. And I trust that the current will take me exactly where I need to go and teach me what lessons I need to learn. And this it's like this exhale.
Mm,
It's like this, okay. And like I love that being held by life is just such a beautiful way to sort of summarize it. Um, yeah, a
mm,
lot of power in all that. So let's go back to the horses. Let's go back to that horses, because how how does time spent in the essence of the horses, either in their physical space, or we can sit with the the idea of the horses even, and in our hearts, how do they, I'm trying to put this as because they don't necessarily do it, but what is it, or what is the magic in that relationship that helps us soften? I'm trying to choose my words so softly here. What is it, the magic in that? What is that? Like,
I don't even know if words can paint that picture. Um, because I'm feeling that there's such a physical sense of the presence, of the holding, of the unconditionality of the presence of horses. And I mean, we can reflect in how long of horses lived alongside humans.
yeah.
They're the prey species that's been alongside us. That's mostly, I'm going to say, probably throughout, with beyond their own choice.
Mhm.
They've been our captured and trained and used
Yeah.
uh, accomplices. We're not in many fields of human endeavor.
Mhm.
And really, if we actually stopped and asked the horses in many of those situations, would they have stayed? If they'd have
Yeah.
took off facing battle, would take off all the constraints of the
Yeah.
ropes and all that, saddles and all the stuff that we put on horses. If
Yeah.
you took that off Would the horses have chosen to stay in the face of all that? Can't absolutely say.
Yeah.
However, it seems given their liberty, given the spacious freedom, the horses still choose to come towards us in spite
Mm.
of all that history of what humans have
Yeah.
put horses through, basically, beyond probably, like I say, their choice.
Yeah.
And yet they still seem to come towards us.
Mm.
And the power of that, my understanding is that, the horses have been waiting for us humans to evolve to see them beyond this beast of burden,
Mm.
this amazing creature that goes really fast and can be fun and can get
Mm.
us from A to B really quickly and can carry, large burdens and
Yeah.
is strong, is fast, is
Yeah.
powerful, and that we can be in the presence of them,
Yeah.
and they still choose to come towards us. They still choose to come and almost invite us into their family
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
as one of them.
Yeah.
When I've seen that time and time and time again, different horses in different countries, they are so accepting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They're so giving.
It's like meet us on another level or a different level. Yeah. Come to us on this different level.
Mm.
And
The conversation that I perceive is available is beyond words. Horses
yeah,
operate beyond words
well beyond. Yeah. Yeah.
in that field of energy that does something to humans on a cellular level.
And what do we tend to do? We tend to want to articulate it. And I'm sorry, we are here, but I started doing these sessions where we sit in the field and we do nothing, we say nothing. But what we offer with that is the choice for the human to leave and say nothing and to allow it to be no words and be beyond words instead of
Mm-hmm.
having to, well, okay, what did you feel? Like beyond the articulation of it, when you, although that's useful and helpful, especially in a group where we hear each other's, that's, don't get me wrong, that's useful, but
Mm-hmm.
there's something to be able to keep it beyond words and to hold it and let it articulate or assimilate in us.
Mm.
Is there? I hear what you're saying, that there's just something in that, and hard to have a conversation about it sometimes because it's beyond words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How where is the story of the horse held? Is it held, or is it a movement of energy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it in the wind, Is it in the feel of the earth under our feet? Is it in the smell of their breath? Is it the smell of their fur? Is that where the story is? Is it in the physical sensations rather than in written down words on a piece of paper?
That's a powerful question, and perhaps everybody answers it differently.
Mm.
Yeah. So then let's move into magic because we did talk about that a bit, and that's sort of our other piece. Um,
Mm.
and you had shared on social media the other day that magic doesn't follow, it's something that which doesn't follow the logical sequential laws. And no structure, lasts forever. Um, and then we talked just a bit before we came on here about, linear life versus non-linear, and the magic happens in the non-linear. I'd love to, we've got a little time to go down that rabbit hole of, I'd love you to elaborate because you have some elaboration on that and some history on that, or story on that.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I was sharing that my contemplation about magic came from reading a piece in a book called The Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. So that book invites a lot of contemplation, and there's one particular aspect of that which happens to be my pearl, as they call it, and that's even that word, the pearl, my pearl. Like, how do I bring that energy forwards out into the world? And there's a vibrational aspect of the pearl, which is called realism for me. And getting into words, it all gets a bit confusing. But
Mm-hmm.
really, I think the realism is about leaving space for the magic, leaving space for the knowing that structure is part of life. Everything has a structure. We have a form, we have a structure,
Yeah.
life has a structure, and that we are not bound by that. We're not bound by the stories we write. Come back to stories. We're not bound by that, and yet we can be.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
every opportunity to be held by structures. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's the structure of religion. There's the structure of law, the way that we're taught things have to be done.
Yeah.
There's the structure of society. There's the structure of the concepts of right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we can live by all those structures, and they all feel like containment to me. They feel like the shadow aspect is limitation in that concept of what the pearl is for me. And so that's where a structure can be like a container that only allows a certain amount of beingness.
Mm-hmm.
And if we stay in that frequency of this is all there is,
Yeah.
where's the magic in there?
Yeah.
So the next stage of raising our frequency, our awareness, is to go, actually, look, there's some spaciousness available, and what happens over there, and what happens over there, and living a life where appreciation of those little tiny things, which are
Yeah.
outside of a contained way of thinking, to me is, it's almost like where the light gets in. It's kind of
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
phrase, the noticing. I think the noticing is so important. Noticing the little things
Mm-hmm.
that catch your eye,
Yeah.
little actions people do, there's moments, they all add up to more and more magic. And I think the more we become aware of those things, the
Yeah.
more they actually show up for us.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
That brings inspiration, and that brings more possibility. And yeah.
And then when you were talking about the structure there, I was thinking that even the story has structure. And how do we see beyond a story or feel beyond a story and find those that expansiveness beyond it? Maybe it guides us there, but you know there's something beyond that thing. So I'm aware of our time here, and I wanted to finish with, and you gave me permission to share this before, but something you wrote the other day, and I think it's a great way to sort of bring this all together. And if I may, I will read this. But it's something you shared on social media the other day. Um, you said, "I'm back in the room, in the house of the internet. Realistically, only a small portion of my energy is resident here, because mostly I live in the world outside of AI patrol dimensions. However, in this moment, here I am. I invite you to consider what else is possible for you. What else is available for you beyond the ideas and perceived reality of the character that you believe yourself to be? What character that lives in the character that lives in the typeface, which presents itself as a container for all that you be, based on life experiences you have consciously and subconsciously recorded in your cells as important up until this now." My invitation is to consider the question of what lies beyond the limits of these designated parameters of you-ness. And where are you now? I think that sums up what we've actually been talking about in a way. Yeah, that really made me think about the different times, the times when I'm sitting here doing my computer work, or but the times when I'm writing, the times I'm out with the horses, the times like where do I choose to spend that time, that nonlinear space where I'm in those spaces, and I think in the day and age we live in, it does us well to consider what you've just said here. And I love if you want if any further insight there or thoughts on that. Like that's it goes back to who am I?
It does. It does. And we can get preoccupied with that, I suppose. Who am I? And people can go into the whole conversation of the I, in that is that a separate from everything else thing? And they can go off on trains about the ego and all those kind of adventures. And people can say we're not an individual I, we're part of a we. We're an interweave with individual unique expressions, which is how I would perceive what I call I to be.
Mm-hmm.
I am this collection of cells which shows up
Yeah.
with this orange jumper and this face.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't consider myself separate as such. And yet I do acknowledge I am a unique expression in the way that I call myself an I.
Mm-hmm.
It can be like a, a brain spinner, I think.
Absolutely.
And
Um,
I think tuning into the moments of contemplating the who am I are
mm-hmm.
things to dip into
Yeah.
and then not get too bound up with, and also to have a little play with, really, because only by acknowledging what our reality is do we get to really choose where we let the magic in, where we make space for magic, and where
Mm-hmm.
we stay stuck in the box that we may or may not have defined for ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think your question, I go back to your question, you were talking about who are you when you were asked that, but you also said here is what is it I'm doing? No, no, hold on, wrong one. Um, oh, how do I show up? And what do I bring when I show up?
Mm.
That's a beautiful question to sort of have tattooed right here. And remember every time when we look in the mirror is like, you know, how do I show up today? How am I going to
I
show
want
up?
to.
Yeah, it's maybe a little softer than who am I, and it's not necessarily it's not a rabbit hole, but it is an offering of how am I going to show up today, and what am I going to bring with that? Am I going to bring love and compassion? I'm going to bring anger and hatred. Like, how am I going to show up today? And that becomes who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. It's highlighting there's always a choice,
Mm,
even if it's a choice to take a pause.
yep.
The
Take a
the
breath.
power of the pause, isn't it? Like to actually go, whoa, this is all spinning out too fast right now. I've lost who I am. I don't know why I'm here and what I'm doing.
Yeah. I
How
know.
do I how do I choose to take that moment to reconsider and reevaluate what is going on? I feel
Mm-hmm.
to refer to a quote by another dear friend, Kerry Lake, and she once said to me, keep the question in mind. It's another one to tattoo on your head. Why am I doing what I'm doing when I'm doing it?
Yeah.
It's staying in that question
Mm-hmm.
to keep the expansive possibility of oh, this is happening. Okay. How do I feel about this thing that's happening right now? Do I want to keep doing it,
Yeah.
or do I want to make a change?
Yep.
And even if that change is a pause, it's a change and it's something we can choose to do. We all have the power of our breath. We all have the power to take that moment. I'm going to shut my eyes or keep them open and just, and in that moment, everything can change.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
we have that power. And that's
Yeah.
a strength and a softness, I think, into play.
Yeah. There's a chapter in a book I'm working on, and the chat called it "Exhaling with Grace," and it's being able to take this that surrendering, that softening, that whatever we want to call it, but that moment of just releasing, as opposed to holding, is that moment of releasing. But how do we do that? Really, we just do it with grace. We just
Mm,
where am I in this moment? What am I doing in this moment? How am I reacting? And just go and then let that go. It'll be here on the next inhale if it needs to still be here.
absolutely. If it needs a
So
little more contemplation, if it needs a little more reflection, a little more looking at, a little more being with, there's no right or wrong, is there? There's no we have to deal with it right now. There's
mm,
a maybe I'm gonna sit with this
yeah,
and I'm gonna my body feel it.
yeah,
It can be scary.
absolutely. Or maybe that exhale just goes and it just floats off somewhere because it's not needed anymore. Yeah.
Mm.
Wow, this has been full. That's an hour, and it's been so full of wisdom. I'm gonna leave you if you have any final words you'd like to share with something from yourself, something from the horses, whatever final words are in your heart.
I just want to reflect gratitude at being invited to share this space and to honor the value of connection and your initial invitation of people who might watch now or later, that the sitting in the invitation of a circle with each other virtually or in real time, that idea that we're on this level playing field, we each have things to contribute, whether it's in the listening, whether it's in the speaking. There's so much richness. And I use the word invitation a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I love it. I
Absolutely.
love the idea that there's like a beckoning hand, which is like that holding, supporting, kindness, benevolence, non-judgmentalness, available to everybody who hears words,
Yeah.
to travel in the direction of those words, to lean into them, to go, not today, thank you.
Yeah.
And that energy is circulating literally between us, all of us, in this moment and every moment to come. And I love that. So thank you.
Thank you. That's there is so much richness in this space in this hour that I know those that are watching or listening will just absorb it and take what is right for them in it. But there is so much. So I think with that, we will close our virtual circle for today. Thank you for those that are here listening, or for those that are listening or watching this in the future. As always, we ask that you share it forward. This this was started. This podcast or interview series was started on the concept of pay it forward, but with inspiration. And we just never know when somebody else. We never know when somebody else needs to hear these words. So it's not up to us to guess, but we ask that if you would share it forward, that helps spread this inspiration and offer a space at this virtual circle. I have a quote to finish with, but I'm not going to use it because there's one thing that you said, Liz, that I'd like to finish with, and it's just these simple words of just knowing that we're being held by life. And that is so powerful. And with that, Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Thank you so much, Liz, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.